Hello and welcome to another Business Builders Bootcamp special. Today we're going to help you take on the world. Exporting can open up amazing opportunities for your business, but in this economic climate it can be daunting. It's all about choosing your market carefully. That's what our aim is today, is to make it easier for you. So let's kick it off with some great advice from Anthony Moss at our last bootcamp.
You need to approach international trade with a clear vision and a clear plan of what you want to achieve. Then what's required to do that in terms of those resources? Do you have the skills? Do you have the funds? Do you have the time to be able to put into your building export markets? Because I suspect, as the rest of the other members of the panel will say, getting into export market is a long-term journey. There are some great overnight success stories, but they're few and far between. Most export success, international trade success is, that 20-year overnight success.
The secret is you've got to be patient. All right, let's get into it. David Koch runs a terrific gourmet food business selling product right around Australia. French by background, he now wants to take on the export market. So we sent along Austrade's Tim Harcourt and the founder of the Byron Bay Cookie Company, Gordon Slater, to lend a hand.
Austrade helped us. We had an export development grant for a number of years, and it kind of winds back, doesn't it? So there's an initial amount that you get, and then you got to stand on your own 2 feet within, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, so it used to be up to 8 because you've got that development phase, you've got to get going.
Yeah.
But over time, it's like the old infant industry argument. People used to say that you provide grants to industries to get them going.
Yeah.
But once they're there for 20, 30 years, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it takes time. Your business is 10 years old.
Yes.
The average time for a business to be successful in exporting, it's, between 5 and 10 years. It takes time.
And a lot of money involved. I don't know if Gordon, you can tell us with your export, but I'm sure it will cost a lot of money to be serious about your export market.
It does, and you look at the model, and I think that's why what Tim's saying is exactly right. There's a number of years of investment. It's not an instant thing. So in your local market, you can make money pretty well straight away. But in an export market, you have to have a time horizon that you say, we're going to invest into this market. And I would think that when we look at our European and our UK business, we weren't making money for about 5 years. So we invested a lot, and it's a painful process when it's, you got your house on the line, and you're working twice as hard as what you ever, and you think, is there going to be any end in sight? And of course there is, but it's a matter of keeping the faith and learning very quickly. You need to be on your toes the whole time. And I think you need to have a bit of mongrel about you. You have to have that kind of grit, determination to keep going.
Yep.
So it's a real marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yeah. Look, in some ways it's the passion that keeps you going. But when you look at even companies coming into the Australian market, you look at companies such as McDonald's. They did lose money for many years developing their niche in the Australian market. It wasn't a sort of an overnight success, and I think that's you're not going to be any different, I don't think, in that.
Great advice there from Gordon Slater. The Byron Bay Cookie Company is one of those terrific export success stories. After the break, we're going to assess the different export markets and how they're going now.
New Zealand first. Why? Because you actually experience all the challenges of exporting, but it's a relatively developed, safe market. It's small. You can make a lot of mistakes there that you can then learn from, because that's in essence what happens when you're on the export journey. You won't get it right all the time, even if you put a lot of planning in.
So obvious, isn't it? Try your exports out first on the Kiwis. It's a whole lot easier and cheaper. Now, if you believe everything you read at the moment, you'd think the global economy was on the verge of collapse, and maybe the best idea is just to bunker down in Australia. But while parts of Europe may be headed for recession, and maybe the US as well, there are other bright economic spots out there that are just ripe for export if you know where to look. Brian Parker, thanks for joining us. 2012 looks pretty scary at the moment. How bad could it be?
It depends on where you're looking. If you're looking in Europe, it looks very, very scary indeed. I think it looks to me like a certainty that Europe as a whole is going to be in a recession next year. Maybe Germany will be able to stay out of recession, but frankly I doubt it. I think that the continent as a whole is going to be in recession next year. If you look in the US, one of the amazing things recently is that fears of a US recession seem to have abated a little bit. The economic numbers coming out of the States are now looking a little bit better. But that said, even the US next year is not going to be all that flash. I think if they do 2% growth next year, that'd be a pretty good outcome.
And what about us here in Australia?
I think we'll be okay. I think the Australian economy overall will hang together reasonably well. But when people talk about this two-speed economy, it's way too simplistic. It's a multi-speed economy. If you're in a state or a part of a state that's doing work with a mining boom, if you're in an industry benefiting from the mining boom, then life's pretty sweet. If you're not, then you have other things to deal with. The fact that interest rates are still higher than they were a few years ago, the currency is still hurting, and confidence is not all that flash. And at the same time also, Australian households are still carrying arguably far too much debt. And we need to go through maybe our own little deleveraging process here.
Look, if you're a business here in Australia, you're looking at the outlook and thinking, hey, it might be better to bunker down here. But are there any bright spots we should be looking at?
Oh, there are, absolutely. But the trouble is trying to time these things. If you decide, for example, look, I just want to hunker down here for a while and I'll just wait till things improve offshore, then you're missing out potentially on opportunities in Asia, on opportunities in, say, parts of Latin America or even parts of Africa, where economic prospects are arguably looking quite a bit better. And everyone talks about Asia. And even within Asia, you see a lot of diversity. There are those countries like, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, who are very, very big exporters, and they are very heavily dependent on the performance of economies in the US and Europe. And if they don't export, they don't eat, because exports are pretty much their entire economy. But elsewhere in the region where economies perhaps aren't quite as export dependent, and where these economies are in really good financial health, and where households are in good financial health, and economic development is proceeding apace, I think you want to be involved there. That's something you really can't
Okay,
time.
but what sort of countries?
Well, if you're talking about the progress you're seeing in Korea and in Taiwan, even in Thailand, elsewhere in the region, you're seeing quite good growth. You can't say, well, because I'm worried about the rest of the world, I don't want to play overseas. Well, if you aren't prepared to actually stake a claim and have a go, you run the risk of missing the boat.
What you're saying is just ignore Europe and the US?
Well, again, I don't think you can. America still has a very, very dynamic, very flexible, globalised economy. A lot of the big global brands are still very much American, and they're getting growth wherever they can find it. And so I don't think it will pay to ignore the United States. Even in Europe, Europe's a big place. Are there bound to be opportunities in selected parts of Europe? Probably, even though the peripheral countries of Europe look absolutely dire. There's no doubt about that.
All right, the big question for exporters at the moment, the Aussie dollar, where do you reckon it's going?
If you hear non-mining exporters, if you hear people in the inbound tourism industry, if you hear people in our universities trying to attract overseas students, and if these people are doing it tough, it tells you something. It tells you the currency looks overcooked. I can give you a whole list of reasons why it is where it is and why it got to $1.10 or $1.11, but I could probably give you another bunch of reasons as to why it really shouldn't be sustained there. I'm prepared to give the currency the benefit of the doubt, though, because there is a lot of good reasons to like the Australian dollar. We do have relatively high interest rates. Our exposure into Asia and China in particular, the boom in terms of trade, a whole range of reasons. We're not printing money, for example. We don't have a central bank actively trying to debase the currency. All of these reasons are reasons to like the Australian dollar, but those reasons are very well known. And to me, those reasons are factored into the price already. So net, what does it mean? It means the currency probably grinds its way lower, but it doesn't grind its way to 68 cents.
Brian, thanks for your time. It gives us a good crystal ball insight of the future. Really appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
Of course, it's not just about how the economy looks, it's also about the ease of doing business. Italy, for example, the 8th biggest economy in the world, the 4th biggest in Europe. But doing business here is so bureaucratic and so tough. Classic example, a guy told me the other day about IKEA. Now, IKEA's opening all these massive stores in Australia at the moment, but they tried for years to open here in Italy, but it was so complex, so bureaucratic, so inefficient that IKEA just gave up. So whichever export market you look at, make sure you assess the ease of doing business there, the government regulations. After the break, we'll take a look at how trade shows and awards can help put your exports on the map.
Trade fairs that I would recommend, you firstly go to the website HKTDC, I think it's .org, but just Google HKTDC, which is Hong Kong Trade Development Council. And you'll find there in Hong Kong there's a trade fair or several trade fairs virtually every week. Whatever it is that you want to sell, if you want to exhibit there, or if you're looking to buy something to import, you just got to find the right fairs. They're on all year round. The other thing is that in America, as Malcolm said, there's millions of trade fairs. There's big ones, there's little ones, but there's tons of them. The main thing about American trade fairs is that primarily the people who come to them are from North America and South America. Right? You'll find a few Aussies floating around as well, but primarily North and South America. We also do fairs in Europe, in Germany, in England, and obviously the people who go there are primarily European countries. So you get a European and then you get just a handful of people from America and Asia. But in Hong Kong, right, all the fairs, right, attract a worldwide audience.
Now, whether it be in Greece or any other country in the world, trade shows are a great way to learn about a new market and also get your product noticed. Now, Trevor and Nicole from Solid Racks have been thinking about exporting their popular watercraft storage racks, but are a bit daunted about the prospect. I sent along Michael Jamison, who's been doing it for years with his Pudding Lane puddings. Also, Tim Harcourt from Austrade has some great pointers as well.
Michael, you've used trade shows a lot in your first means of getting established as an exporter. Have you got any advice to Nikki and Trevor about trade shows?
Trade shows, I believe, are an excellent source of meeting your customer, that is the final customer in your export market, but also picking up your distributor, meeting them face to face. You've got the Australian accent, they don't. You can talk your product better than anybody else. You believe in it, you know every single thing there is to know about it. And that's what we did in our export markets. We were the people on the ground, meeting the distributors, customers. We could answer every single question in a timely manner, and they knew who they were dealing with. It was the way we gathered our distribution and started our relationships.
One thing I noticed in your showroom is you've got a wall full of wonderful awards that you've won as a company. And Michael, you've won the Oscars of fine foods, haven't you? I mean, are awards important to building your confidence when you're exporting?
They are, especially if they're in your designated export market. But again, choose quality. It should reflect your brand. It should only add to your brand equity. I don't believe it should be something for pure marketing or for something other than the core of your product, because that's the credibility, and that will generate the editorial. It will generate the positive word of mouth and the marketing in the export market that will achieve your brand and sales.
Look, that's all well and good, but Nicole is really worried about the impact on cash flow.
What concerns us is cash flow. Obviously, that's our biggest enemy at this point. How did you go with that in the export market? That's one of our biggest concerns, I guess, starting exporting.
Well, if you don't have a budget before you export, you need one. You need to do a cash flow analysis. You need to make sure you have your spreadsheets, you've got them in place, they're realistic, they're achievable. But that's another part that the Export Market Development Grant assists with. For example, this year, we had our application in by the 30th of June. I was paid by, I think, the end of August. And that came into my budget for my cash flow, and that feeds into your export production.
And they also basically help you with a business plan, with those sorts of foreseeables. For instance, the Aussie dollar's got very strong against the US. How have you found the exchange rate? Because that moves around a lot.
Well, we attended an Austrade export seminar free of charge in Newcastle on how to price your goods in the market you intended to go to. From that, you look at all the components of pricing. One of the aspects that we took on was to fix the currency at a date and place that we felt we were comfortable with for a time frame also that we could accept.
Right.
Oh, okay.
You set up a forward contract in
Yes.
in effect.
After the break, how to get a grant from the government to help out. But before then, some great tips from Anthony Moss on how to find the right distributor.
In terms of how to find an appropriate distributor, the key is to, first of all, identify who's the end user for your product, whether that distributor is going to sell directly to end users or sell to retail or some other, outlet. And the best place to start is actually to talk directly to some of those end users. Find out the key retailers that have the potential to carry your product, and talk to them and ask them about the who are the best distributors in a market.
You've got to have something different. If you've got something that they don't already have, then you have a show. If you're going there just with the same old, same thing what everyone else has already, and you might go there at a slightly better price, forget about it. That's not going to cut the ice or get you in the door. You need to have a range. If you go there with one or two products, major retailers really don't want to set up a new account, for a supplier who's got one or two items. If you've got a range of products and it's different, it's well priced and competitive, then yes, you've got a good chance to get in there.
Well, today's show was all about exports, and as you can see, government organisations like Austrade really do offer a lot of help. But it's important to understand government help isn't limited to just exporters. Anthony Churi runs the Health and Wellbeing Institute, which develops risk management programs. He's after help from the government, and we showed him how to do it.
Do you look at federal first, or do you look at state, or do you look at both as a potential?
Look at both would be my advice. There are some of the general assistance services, like the Oz Industry Hotline, is equipped to basically give you some advice on where best to go. So they can tell you whether you're eligible for a federal government program, and if not, they may be able to suggest a particular state government program that might assist you. Some of the general assistance websites like grantslink.gov.au or the grants and assistance element of business.gov.au list both federal and state and territory grants, so you can compare and look at what you might be eligible for. Usually there's no direct overlap because what government is very aware of is that they don't want to give the same assistance twice. They don't want to reward you twice for doing the same kind of activity. So government grants tend to be structured so that if you're eligible for one, you're not necessarily eligible for another. But it is worth looking at the range of assistance that's available, because both the federal government and state governments have a range of assistance mechanisms available to a range of businesses.
If you have been unsuccessful in an application for a grant, is there a review process, or do you get some feedback as to why your application was not successful?
You should always get feedback, and if you don't get feedback, you should ask for it. Governments should be prepared to tell you why you missed out on a grant. That doesn't necessarily help you with that particular grant, but it should help you in the future to understand where you can do better. There's usually always a review mechanism for a particular grant program. So if you think you've been hard done by, if you think you haven't been fairly treated, there is a review mechanism to be able to have a look at your circumstances again.
Now, Bruce, you help people with putting together grant applications. What do you do in relation to that process? How can you help in regards to that?
What we would usually do is go to a business and find out what their business plan is, where they intend to take the business. And quite often I would use the analogy, if you're driving from Sydney to Brisbane and there's cheap petrol in Broken Hill, it's not worth going out there. And it's the same with a business. If you know where your business is, where you're taking it, we will look at grants that will actually assist you in achieving those objectives and not change the direction of the business just to get a grant.
And what are the costs associated with doing things like that?
We work entirely off a success fee. We found that that's the most beneficial for our clients, that if we're unsuccessful in getting them a grant, we don't charge them anything.
Bruce, can you run me through the application process? What's involved?
Well, our normal methodology is that we'd come out, meet with you, discuss with you what the business does, what your future plans are, where you want to take the business, and from that we will then identify the various grants that could be of assistance to you to achieve those objectives. We will then go through the process of an application and put it together with you to make sure that the application has the highest chance of success. We would look at the various issues that we know are inherent from an outsider looking at your business with a clean set of eyes to present your business in the best possible light to the government.
Look, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you need any more information, go to the website kochiesbusinessbuilders.com.au and also join our community on Twitter and Facebook. Have a good day. I'm going to go and visit that derelict old building, I think.